Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The SBA Office of Advocacy has released its first-year report, examining how small businesses are responding to rapid shifts in federal contracting and regulatory policy. The findings highlight both strain and adaptation as firms adjust to changing rules and agency priorities. We'll walk through what stood out and what comes next with Chip Bishop, Deputy Chief Counsel for Advocacy at the Small Business Administration. Mr. Bishop, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. It's really great to be here.
We're going to get into the details of your annual report here, but before we do, I'd like to have you tell me what the Office of Advocacy at the Small Business Administration actually does.
I would be delighted. I've been a federal regulator for over a decade, and I'm still learning what our office does because there's a lot of people that just don't know what we are. So the Office of Advocacy at the Small Business Administration was set up by Congress in 1976. So we're rounding the bend on our 50th year right now. And we were set up to be a liaison between the small entities, which includes small businesses, nonprofits, and also municipalities with under 50,000, and be the liaison between them and all the federal agencies. So that's a little unique. We're one of the only federal agencies that spans the entire government to work on regulatory issues.
We're hearing that 2025 was a tough year for small businesses between the Small Business Administration's audit of the 8A program, new changes to DEI regulations, just outright terminations of various different programs. At the Office of Advocacy, what are you hearing from this constituency?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of voices. That's one of the key inputs that we have in our office is that we get out into the field. We hear from people all across the country, and we hear a lot. You're right. There's a lot of changes to the small business community, but there's also a lot of excitement. I'd say that the undercurrent of opportunity is strong. So I often hear them say, oh, I'm not sure about getting this loan, or this regulation, is it hurting me? But I'm excited for where we're going. Can we please work together and iron things out so we can just keep trucking, keep building prosperity, creating jobs, putting food on our plates?
Are there federal agencies where the relationship to this community is stronger than others?
Yeah, I think that there's a number of federal agencies that have more of a regional presence. I'm thinking about Housing and Urban Development. I know EPA has regional offices. HHS does as well. So those who are out in the field have that huge benefit of tapping into real businesses where they live and work.
And the flip side then is, are there some agencies that are just harder to get along with for the small business, small entity community?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that there's this kind of perennial issue that the authority to regulate and government power is concentrated in Washington, D.C., but the real information that drives the economy forward and drives the whole country is out in the field. So agencies that just operate from D.C. without considering where the small businesses are and what issues they face, I think that they're a little bit in the dark. So I really urge every agency to get out in the field and hear the voices that we're hearing every day.
Well, let's get into the report that talks about what you're hearing and how agencies are responding. You just released your first-year report, and it tracks regulatory costs and paperwork burdens. That's another topic that's gotten a lot of headlines. The Trump administration is really on a deregulatory tack. So what are you hearing? What are agencies driving, and what's the impact on small business?
Yeah, Terry, I'll tell you, this is one of the most exciting parts of the job because we get to interface with the small businesses who are voicing, hey, we're trying to fill gaps here and we're trying to be on the cutting edge of innovation, but the regulations are kind of boxing us out. Meanwhile, we're working with the agencies on the other hand. And I'll say this is one thing that the Trump administration has done very well is they've enabled all the federal agencies to do what we've been wanting to do for a long time. As I mentioned, I've been a federal regulator. I've been an economist for 4 administrations. We're always faced with that challenge of we want to clean the books out. We want to clean the underbrush, as we spoke about earlier, and we want to get it out, but we have a competing priority with all the new regulations that the administration that's sitting wants to push out. This administration has right-sized that, where you had at least a dozen agencies issue requests for information last year asking for what regulations need to go, which ones are pinching businesses, what's this underbrush. And we're finding regulations that are 10 years old, 40 years old, that are still impacting businesses, but we have the explicit mandate now to work with these agencies to reform that. And the businesses are excited. I was just in Boston last week, and I was talking to fishermen, And one fisherman said he counted and he is regulated by 17 different federal agencies, and a lot of them are overlapping. And you don't think often like overlapping, big deal, what does it mean? But like Fish and Wildlife and NOAA, one agency calls a squid a shellfish and the other one doesn't. It sounds kind of silly and really niche, but what that means is if that fisherman hauls in a net, he has to have 2 different inspections done, one for one agency and one for the other, and that is time and that is money that he actually has to pay the overtime for the inspectors. So one thing that we're doing is we now have the license to go work with agencies and help them drive the regulatory change that they've been wanting to do for decades, and we can finally do it now.
I'm speaking with Chip Bishop. He's Deputy Chief Counsel for the Office of Advocacy at the Small Business Administration. Well, Chip, let's pull that thread a little bit farther because compliance and regulatory burden is a huge topic. If you're trying to rationalize regulations across 17 agencies, how does that happen? Yeah,
I would say that getting the agencies to coordinate has always been a challenge. But one thing that unites them is when we hear enough from our small businesses and we can present a clear case and we can get a lot of agencies to the table. So we have a regional outreach program. We've got staff across the country, and they're out there. And when they find an issue that a small business raises, we look at it and we say, hey, I wonder if this is other places in the country. And we start asking around and we start pulling these threads, and we're finding that these regulations have been impacting businesses across the country. And what we can do then is we gather a report. So our office is organized with a bunch of attorneys, economists, and a communications staff. And we take those issues in. We also establish a red tape hotline. So even if we don't reach the small businesses, they can call us. They can call our 800 number. They can email us at redtape@sba.gov, or they can go on our website and fill out a form. And that tells us, hey, I'm experiencing a problem. I'm getting pinched by some federal program. Can you help? And we take that into our intake process, and then we prepare all the background that's needed to share it with the agencies. And the agencies have been really grateful, and we take it a step further. Our office was set up to help agencies. So a lot of agencies haven't heard of our office. They might have known they had to do a 610 review, which is a retrospective review on their regs at least every 10 years. What they might not know is that our office is at the ready to step in and help them do these analyses to take some of the weight off their shoulders. And our goal is when we have an engagement with an agency, it is to make the timeline faster than if they tried to go it on their own.
So does that red tape hotline primarily apply to the small entity clients, or can folks who are in the federal government who say, I really need some help on this deregulation effort also call you?
Yeah, I mean, our door is always open, so they can reach out to us directly. The red tape hotline specifically is for small entities facing regulatory burden, but our office, we're coming around the bend on 50 years. We've always been helpful and ready to help these federal clients.
That is a resource I bet most people don't know about.
They don't, and I'm happy to tell people about it.
Speaking of resources, let's talk about AI, because every conversation ultimately winds up there these days. We're hearing that AI is a game changer for small businesses. Not only is it helping them more quickly process the whole federal business space, but it's helping them select the right proposals to respond to. It's shaping even their protests if it gets to that point. What are you hearing, and how is AI playing out in your world?
No, you're absolutely right. And it's nice to talk about this because we just published in September a report, AI in Business, Small Firms Closing In. And we looked at this emerging AI technology, and small businesses have been loving it because if you're a small business, do you have the budget to hire a marketing professional and an office like administrative person and someone to do operations or do logo design? And suddenly, with paying a couple bucks a month, you can have professional products at your doorstep. So a lot of small businesses are using it, but there's still that gap because a small business, they got a lot of things on their mind. So, while their adoption has been growing and they've been catching up to large firms, they're still focused a lot on marketing and issues, not as much integration, but we're seeing that change. The ubiquity of the tools and the quality of them is expanding, and small businesses are really leveraged to use that to enhance the opportunities and the products that they offer.
How is that linking back to the deregulatory work that you mentioned up front?
I mean, I think the theme is pretty consistent, that AI has cut out a lot of transaction costs. And that's really the goal for the deregulatory push, is to cut out transaction costs, things that were one-size-fits-all rules that apply to small businesses that are at the margins. They're the ones driving change. I was down in Austin, Texas, and they're building a big Samsung facility, a $40 billion facility, but I think they said they're contracting 175 small businesses to do it. Right, and they're in there. They're at the tip of the spear of innovation, but they're often held back. There are regulations that tell small businesses, like, you need to report who owns you. Well, a small business, you might be working on a loan from your grandmother. You might be having a lien on your estate to get some cash. So when you're reporting these things, for a large business, it's pretty clear. But for small businesses, they have to run around, hire CPAs. A lot of the rules that come out of government come from this posture of seeing the big businesses, but they're ignorant of a lot of the smalls that are operating under the surface that represent almost 99% of most industries are, by a firm count, are small businesses.
Well, with the report that's out now and some of the metrics that are in there, as you look ahead to 2026, where's your next focus for improvement?
Yeah, 2025 was really, because we're in the regulatory world, which tends to lag, we were building infrastructure. So we collected over 400 ideas for regulations that need change from our small businesses, and we've been teeing those up to agencies, telling them directly these are things we'd like reform on. So now we've got placeholders. When new small businesses talk to us, they call us, they send into the red tape hotline, and they say, we've got this issue, let's drive it forward. And now the agencies are starting to churn out their notice of proposed rulemakings, and we're able to engage at that stage and say, hey, please don't ignore this voice. We've got a report that's ready-made for you.
That's exciting, and it sounds like it'll be a busy year.
A busy year full of a lot of opportunity, and I'm really excited for it.
I've been speaking with Chip Bishop. He's the Deputy Chief Counsel for the Office of Advocacy at the Small Business Administration. Thanks so much for joining me today.
It was my pleasure.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Listen to the Federal Drive on your schedule. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.